Please welcome to the stage Mike Hamilton, who is the President and CEO of GE Healthcare Canada.
I want to welcome everyone to this afternoon's panel discussion. Looks like we've still got a lot of people drifting in here, but the topic this afternoon, we're changing gears a little bit from this morning and focusing perhaps a little bit less on the science and more on the human aspect of how we deliver good theranostics in Canada. So the title is Developing an All-Inclusive Approach to Workforce Capacity from Production to Patient Delivery. So I'm honored to be here with our esteemed panelists. I'm actually just going to kick it off with a little bit of a preamble, but rather than me introducing them, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves. In Canada, the successful implementation of radiotheranostics really hinges on building a comprehensive, inclusive workforce that can address both the technical and the clinical complexities involved in this multidisciplinary approach. This panel will explore strategies to develop and sustain workforce capacity for radiotheranostics, ensuring the right mix of professionals across production, research, imaging, and patient care to deliver high-quality, equitable health care. At GE Canada, we are committed to supporting this transformation. We're actively building partnerships to bring theranostics and make it a reality here in Canada. We're collaborating with healthcare leaders, with governments, with Canadian patient groups, and with industry colleagues. So before we kick it off, if maybe I can start with you, Alvina, if you want to introduce yourself.
My name's Alvina Ng. I'm the Research Operations Manager at the Brain Health Imaging Center at CAMH in Toronto. I'm a nuclear medicine technologist by training, and I've been in the field in an academic research setting for almost 25 years. I'm also the Radiation and X-ray Safety Officer at CAMH.
Okay, great. Chris?
Yeah, afternoon, everyone. Chris Horn. I'm a VP of Isotopes for Laurentis Energy Partners, so I'm the industry expert on the panel. Background in reactor operations projects, and 24 years of experience in reactor operations and maintenance.
Thank you. The other Chris.
Is this on? Yeah. I am representing the Canadian Association of Medical Radiation Technologists. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Communications there, and I'm going to speak to some of the research we've been doing to track the workforce.
And then finally, Shane. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Shane Harding. I'm a senior scientist at Princess Margaret Cancer Center, and I co-direct a training program called STARS 21 that's really focused on training the next generation of radiation scientists.
Thanks, Shane. So the rapid integration of radioligand therapy with theranostics has really been enabled by a number of factors, including major advances in imaging equipment, development of new radio tracers, a lot of which we've heard about this morning, and the use of AI to optimize treatment, such as dosimetry and so forth. But as fast as this exciting technology has evolved, there are real concerns that our health systems are not resourced to effectively adopt this exciting precision medicine. And so maybe, Chris Topham, I'll probably ask this question of you to start. What's the situation now, and how far do we have to go? How should we consider the current gaps in medical radiation technicians as the emergence of theranostics creates new challenges?
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm sure most of you in this room know that we've been enduring a difficult period with the health workforce across the board. But when it comes to medical radiation technologists, what we've seen is sort of a lag in investment that we needed over time. So we see a shortage across the board. When it comes to nuclear medicine technologists, what we see is since we began tracking the workforce, there was 2% vacancy, 2% vacancy. And then in about 2021, climbed to 7. It was 10 in 2023, and we're currently collecting from managers across Canada sort of the level of vacancy that they have in their departments. So it's quite a big level of vacancy. And what you see is that it's sort of distributed very unevenly across the country. So certain urban centers with big facilities that are more attractive are maybe not suffering as much as those in the rural and remote areas, and certain provinces are doing better than others after they've put in different incentives and things like that. So really, this underlying shortage of medical radiation technologists, and specifically nuclear medicine technologists, we feel will make it very difficult for theranostics to take off. As we heard from one of the speakers earlier, you can't do one. There's a trade-off, isn't there? Every time you take a technologist to do therapy, you take them away from the imaging that the population also needs. So we feel it's required of governments across the country and other partners to address this underlying shortage of medical radiation technologists, and so that we can get to a better future where we can provide all these wonderful technologies to Canadians across the country.
Thanks, Chris. So Alvina, what are the biggest gaps in the current training programs for radiotheranostics that really are limiting the growth in the field, especially for professionals like medical radiation technologists, nuke med technologists, which we've talked about? We all know there's a shortage of nurses, and I'm also curious, as we get outside of the actual care environment and into the radioisotope production environment as well, what do the programs look like there? And probably we'll turn to the other Chris for that one. But let's start with you, Alvina. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. So current training programs right now for MRTs and nuclear medicine technologists do encompass the core components of imaging and patient care. So we are well equipped to take on and handle clinical theranostic workflows, particularly PET-CT techs, because we're already trained on advanced imaging modalities. However, one of the biggest challenges for us nukes, is the actual coordination of treatment schedules and logistics with other departments for patient care plans. So in this regard, additional training for nukes could include expanded exposure to patient care responsibilities, such as additional patient monitoring, post-therapy management, dosimetry, and associated regulatory guidelines. So this would also reflect how nuke med is moving from a primarily diagnostic field to incorporating therapy and imaging together. For nurses, as Mike had already alluded to, since they're already the main point of contact for the patient themselves, between the departments and other healthcare professionals, radiation safety and dosimetry training for these folks would be beneficial. And nurses are already short-staffed, so any training across different healthcare professionals regarding and to share the patient care responsibilities, so the actual provision of theranostics and therapy will have sufficient support throughout their treatment and their care and their post-therapy. In the other fields that Mike spoke about, such as imaging scientists, physicists, cyclotron engineers, radiochemists, these are all relatively niche roles. So at our center at CAMH, we're a research-dedicated facility. So as in other academic hospitals, we have the ability to bring in chemistry, physics, engineering, imaging students at all stages of their education. But even still, we face challenges when we try to fill vacancies or increase our staffing, especially when we're looking for folks that are already in nuclear or the isotope field. And this is in addition to shortages of nurses and nuke med techs. So with these roles, particularly chemistry, production, and engineers, they often come in without any nuclear or isotope or cyclotron experience, and they receive on-the-job training. And as you know, it is quite a long, lengthy, resource-heavy process. So perhaps more undergraduate or graduate programs or courses in these disciplines for imaging methodology, kinetic modeling, radiochemistry probe development, and cyclotron engineering would be beneficial. And this could also include practical or vocational components, such as actual radiopharmaceutical production in a GMP environment.
Thanks, Alvina. And Shane, just kind of from the commercial radioisotope production, as well as, actually, I meant to say Chris, I'm sorry, on commercial, what is the human resource and training environment look like there? And are we in a better position than we are actually within the healthcare system?
Yeah, no, I think we have our challenges as well. Similarly, we get a lot of engineers who apply. We need to think about cross-training, getting them the exposure. I think even from an education piece of bringing folks into nuclear has been a challenge, just based on, we haven't done a good job of educating the public on nuclear. We haven't been able to speak to them in languages that they can understand and hear. So getting, high school students, even down to elementary school students excited about nuclear has been a challenge for us since we've been in the industry. So, I think that's where we can start to look to how do we speak to the public, not just at a community, we want to build projects here, but more, we need to build a pipeline very early on to try to attract the talent that we need to execute a lot of the projects in theranostics that we want to execute, and grow from there.
Thanks, Chris. So Shane, if we look forward and say, in an ideal state, what are the essential elements required to develop a cohesive national strategy that actually supports this kind of interdisciplinary training and program collaboration across, kind of all areas of theranostics, whether it's, production of radioisotopes, research, clinical care, imaging, and so forth in Canada?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is related to the themes that have already come up, and certainly training is one of them. We were lamenting over lunch the fact that a lot of us aren't exposed to radiation biology or radiation at an educational level often until we hit graduate school, certainly in the research world. And so I think we do need to do a much better job at sort of communicating this to the public, to students at all levels, that there are viable careers in this area and that it's a really important area for us to develop. So that starts, I think, there and how we train students. One of the things we try and do in the STARS 21 program is to bring students that are in a variety of different disciplines, whether they're medical doctors that have been trained in that area, or they're graduate students that are training in radiation biology or radiation chemistry, for example, and bring them into one room to start talking the same language and to meet experts in various fields to bring up that sort of interdisciplinary idea, because that is central, I think, to everything that we think about in this area, is that it's not any one individual that sort of floats the boat to say, it's really the community that does this. So I think we need to foster that. The other issue, I think, is we have graduate students that come into our programs that think about sort of a classical academic trajectory. But increasingly, we're having students come to us and say, look, this classical academic career is not for me. I want to go into industry. I want to have these opportunities to learn about them. And we're trying to start to bridge that gap by bringing folks in to sort of explain there's different opportunities available beyond that sort of classical trajectory, if you want. And that, I think, is really appreciated by students, just seeing what opportunities are out there and partnerships. And then the last element, I'm a researcher, so we're always whinging about funding, but funding is crucial to this. And I think, how we're training students and how we're supporting them through this training process is essential. There have in the past been very important interdisciplinary training programs that have been supported by governments, and we've gotten away from doing that, but I think those are essential elements too that we could advocate to build again.
Okay. And then building upon that, as technology continues to rapidly evolve, and if I even just think of how AI has impacted all of our lives in the past 12 to 24 months, what strategies will we need to adopt to ensure that workforce remains agile and capable as this is accelerating? If you look at the funnel of new isotopes and molecules coming at us, this is, we're only at the beginning. There's a lot more to go. So how do we make sure that the people are continually learning?
I mean, in an academic setting like I operate in, that's relatively easy to accommodate, I think, because we're seeing new things as they come out. They're being developed even within our own institute or within our own communities. I think it's how we communicate that to the outside world and how we sort of build that beyond sort of our academic walls. I think we do a relatively good job at that, but that ability to communicate and sort of advocate for it is becoming increasingly important, I think. And maybe someone mentioned before that maybe we haven't done such a good job as a community.
Go for it, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak, and if you agree with me, Alvina, but I think technologists come into this career expecting it to be an environment of change, so they're particularly well positioned to take on these challenges as they come, because from the get-go, they've adopted this profession as one of change and one that they expect will have new educational challenges as they go through it. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yeah. One other thing, I was actually at a dinner last night with some people, and one of the topics which was raised was around actually reimbursement and income, and the fact that often nuclear medicine techs are not reimbursed at the same rate as other medical techs are. And then also the fact that you can go province to province, and the amount of education you need to actually become certified differs by province. So what should we be doing there, and how do we actually help that situation?
That's a really great question. It's a total patchwork, and it's become only worsened by the recent conditions. People have been throwing out bonuses. These are wonderful for the people who are getting them, but what it means is interprovincially there's wild variation between what people are paid, and some of these are put onto the base pay and some are just a bonus or a retention bonus or something like that. Yeah, and in terms of the education, there is a competency profile that's a national competency profile, but there is variation. For example, Dalhousie runs a 4-year program for nuclear medicine technologists, whereas in some other parts of the country it's 2 or 2.5 years. So, but at the base level, they're all meeting the national competency profile. Obviously, in a longer program, they deal with extra topics such as research and things like that.
Yeah. Alvina, sorry. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt. No. Do you have a perspective there, Alvina, as a tech yourself, or originally trained as one?
I would love to be paid more, but I'm not sure my boss would agree. But yeah, no, but the thing is, like, I know, like say at Michener and the other nuke med programs now, they are incorporating theragnostics into the program during the training, and they do offer theragnostic continuing education for those who are already practicing. But it's something that Chris had mentioned earlier, that if you're in general imaging already, being asked to be pulled out, take some courses, do run the theranostic workflow, it's going to be difficult because you can only do one or the other. You can either do general imaging, or you're going to be pulled into the PET side and do the PET or the theranostic side.
Okay, thanks. Chris, are there some examples of successful partnerships or workforce models that you're familiar with, whether it's in Canada or internationally, that could serve as blueprints for kind of scaling radiotheranostics as we look forward?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, there's some good examples within Canada. I think the partnerships between like UBC, BC Cancer, Triumph, and McMaster CPDC are good examples of partnerships where university, government, and industry are working together. If I was to think of outside industry, the best example I can think of where we need to evolve to is kind of along the line of skilled trades in Ontario. When I was growing up in high school, there was a big push for university, not a lot of push for skilled trades. Obviously, that created a deficiency in the market, similar to what we're experiencing now. And I think we need to do something similarly from a government perspective of building something similar to Skills Trades Ontario, having interprovincial designations that allow easy transfer of qualifications between provinces, similar to Red Seal trades. But also pushing that at the school level, similar to what we talked about the education before. I think the model they have of earn while you learn is a good one to maybe implement as well. So I think there's a lot we can learn from how, you know, a huge shortage of skilled trades to do all the projects in Ontario has developed over the last, 10, 15 years, that we could certainly build on some of that to get us our workforce that we need to, not only meet today's demand, which, Chris alluded to is not nearly there, but also any future growth that we're looking at is kind of the best example I'm thinking of there, Mike.
Any other perspectives there?
I think the other thing that we can consider is these sort of academic industry partnerships as we train students even at the upper levels in graduate training, for example, where we get them access into these programs. Because as I said, the trajectory of students now is often not into the academic world, but into the industrial world. And sort of facilitating those with relationships early in their training, I think, is really important to help them network and develop and build the force.
Thanks, Shane. So, the last question, it's a question that I heard earlier this morning, and I'm going to ask it of each of you. If you had kind of the proverbial magic wand and you could change one thing, what would you do to actually help address this challenge that we've got as we look forward and try to embrace theranostics and make it available in an equitable way across the country?
Holding the microphone, so I guess that means me. My perspective sits in training and research, and I think, because I'm in an academic teaching hospital setting, we have I think in some ways a very unique role to play, because we have people at sort of all stages in this. And so in an insular way, we can contribute to generating that sort of pipeline of new folks into the area. But that is a very insular approach, and I think it's reaching out to those academic industrial partnerships, government partnerships, building programs that make this an attractive area for people to come and work and learn and develop in, because it is an exciting area, and I think we just have to make people aware of it, and in fact, they're just not.
I got the other mic. So I was going to say something along the same lines. Like, change management requires a burning platform, and we have the best burning platform there is, right? We're all here to kick cancer's ass, and everyone in this room. So I think we just need to really speak to that, to the public, and get them excited about what we're doing in Canada. I don't think we speak enough. I think we speak a lot to each other, but not enough outwards. So I think if I was to kind of encourage folks in this room, is to leave here, talk to neighbors, talk to their children about the exciting, future that we have in this area.
Thanks, Chris.
My perspective is, a day like today where we're bringing together lots of different partners, I think bringing together all the possible voices that could be involved, I know it can be a pain, but in the long run, I think involving everyone as early as possible, and this is fantastic because I think the vision of CNIC is that if we start to plan now, we're going to be better able to take this on in the future. I think that's the one thing I would change, because we often operate in silos or limited partnerships and leave out important voices.
Thanks, Chris. Alvina, we'll let you wrap it up.
There's not much I can add. Everyone's already said all the good points. But I think we also need to also just remember too that the importance of trying to retain the techs and the nurses and the radiochems and the engineers that we have already. And from someone from a hospital, we try not to lose them to the industry side, which is more lucrative. But then also, like Shane was talking about, like catching them earlier in their academic careers, or catching them early in their educational careers to kind of draw them into the field, so that we can, prevent a bigger gap going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. Are there any questions from the audience?
Hi. Thank you so much. I'm Sasan from AI Valley. I have a question for Dr. Harding. You mentioned that so much exposure is at the graduate level. Do you think, is there a role to introduce this concept to undergrad or even at the highest school in terms of advocacy and campaign and introduction to public, basically, especially if you want to bring it to the community level?
I mean, absolutely. I think, I speak from a perspective as a radiation biologist, but I learned nothing of radiation biology until I hit graduate school. And it's a fundamental element of how we operate in medicine. So I think, yes, the earlier we can push that, the better. I mean, kids are curious. They want to learn about this stuff, and I think that's the opportunity to really attract them and to bring this sort of concept, the foundation for this field forward.
Thank you. There is a second part. Instead of emphasizing on theoretical level, is by learning by doing in terms of clinical placement and apprenticeship. So there is a collaboration between industry and education system. Do you think there is a role also for that?
So that's sort of, I guess, what I was alluding to when I mentioned academic industry partnerships, this idea of, one of my notes on my little slip here is co-op programs. I mean, those are fundamental in a lot of ways at the earlier stages. I think that we can bring this to the light of people. But certainly at the graduate level, there's ways to do this as well.
Thank you so much.
I'm Vinod Chug. I come from the nuclear power side of the industry. From workforce point of view, I'm an immigrant, so I'll speak about our integration of immigrants into our workforce. I would like to know from your respective organization perspectives, what I've seen, based on my personal experience and some of the data we have seen, pretty much 40 to 50% of qualified immigrants, they end up doing odd jobs. And so I would like to know how you are trying to address that issue in your respective organizations. Is there any initiative on that front? Because in my opinion, the workforce issue is created by our own inefficiencies rather than something else that we cannot fix. So any insights on that would be helpful, and feel free to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks. I can speak from the CAMRT perspective. We were successful in getting a federal government grant to sort of improve the integration of international MRTs into the Canadian workforce. And so we're looking at ways to sort of not only improve the education they receive in order to pass the exam, but also do some mentoring and even expose some of them to the Canadian sites before they have to take the exam and integrate. So this is a pilot we're running. We haven't piloted any candidates yet, but it will include some nuclear medicine technologists. But you're quite right. We see about 40 to 50% of the potential candidates from other countries unable to practice in Canada, and that's obviously a great loss to the profession, and especially in a time of shortage.
Thanks, Chris. Dr. Wong?
Really enjoyed the discussion. My question is to Dr. Harding. I've had the pleasure of being present with your students in the STARS 21 program. I just wonder whether there are any examples of that synergy that you can share with us, bringing people from different environments and how it might have changed the students' thinking in their project design. And related to that, I was thinking whether we can apply it to people like us that are working in this space. If you throw them together and give them opportunity to talk, what type of new ideas might we expect with that mechanism work for them?
Sure. One of the central portions of the training program is we have bi-weekly brainstorming sessions. And so we have students who are, as I said, practicing physicians, or trainees who are practicing physicians, and we have students in everything from radiochemistry to radiobiology to physics. And so I don't have, concrete specific examples, but there are lots of instances where, we have graduate radiation biologists who have never heard of radiochemistry, for example. I mean, that's how little really we're exposed to these things. And it's opening the mind to those different possibilities. And so there have been plenty of collaborations that have developed between students outside of what they would do with their supervisors within those environments. So really, as you said, it's just getting people in the same room. Seminar series that we have within our institutions, I think, are very important. Bringing in external folks to expand the conversation, I think, is really all we can do, or probably the best thing we can do, is to get people in the same room.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
I think
I've
only been standing half an hour. Don't worry about it, Mike. So thank you for this. Part of the problem, Sudhir and Paul, I'm chair-in-chief at Western. I think part of our problem is we've got a system that was built as silos, and we're trying to integrate it as a healthcare system. So we have high schools doing their thing, we have training colleges doing their thing, we have hospitals trying to do their thing, we have industry doing their thing. And I talked to our training colleges to say, what stops you training more people? So one is interest, two is, are there going to be the jobs there? And three, can we afford to set up training courses if we don't know that that we're going to get the recruits and stuff like that? We also, I don't know if we all have a HHR crisis at the moment, but has anybody calculated how many nuclear medicine techs we need over the next 5 to 10 years? Because there is a concern in the training colleges, we set this course up and we could flood the market within a few years if we do this, right? So I think, just like you said at the end there, we need to get together and say, this is the job creation program. This is the opportunity, and it's not just going to be a year, 3 years, 5 years. Theranostics, the whole thing's going to explode, right? So it's not what we've been doing in terms of just bone scans and MIBs and all the rest of it. That we're still going to be doing that, but how is theranostics going to affect the workforce? And I'm not sure if we've calculated that. And then reverse engineer to say, training colleges, this is the job, right? And I think government has a role in trying to fund them so they don't take the risk on their own about setting up programs which they're not sure how many people they're going to train, right? Because the crisis is now, and the way we work, it takes us 5 to 10 years to do anything, right? And that's going to artificially limit what we do. So yeah, it's just an idea of that. We're going to have to think about the low-hanging fruit and how we're going to impact things today, because everything else is going to take way too long. And the last thing I will say is traditional roles. We know that, this role does this role does this. But just like in radiology, we're having to find that if we don't have enough CT techs, we're going to have to get an assistant to help do some of the tasks that the tech did so they can do more of what the CT tech does. And that's where we may have to work with the credentialing authorities to say, hey, listen, can we work together and look at what you absolutely need to have a nuclear tech doing and what can be done by somebody else. And otherwise, we can stand in our silos, but it's not going to help, right? So, and thanks for your comments. I really enjoyed your conversation.
Thanks for your perspective. Okay, finished with 2 minutes to spare. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the panelists.